The time is now to start learning about these regulations. If you are in New York City, these are some things that is coming up about New York City, and hosts on Airbnb are cracking down on changes in New York City. So let's take a listen to this particular video talking about New York City.
Last week we told you about the confusing new process that hosts will have to go through in the new year if they want to list their place on Airbnb in New York City.
And as officials get ready to ramp up enforcement to existing laws, they're preparing for another public hearing next month. Today in part two, Chris Welch went one-on-one with Airbnb on why they call some of the city's plans ludicrous.
I think it's pretty ridiculous.
So do we have to move out of New York? That's possible.
Last week, we introduced you to Claudine and William. Two Airbnb hosts were only identifying with their first names because by early next year, they could be facing thousands of dollars in fines for illegal listings. Hosts will soon have to register with the city, attesting to the fact that they are following all applicable laws. Laws that, in some cases, the city had turned a blind eye on before. For example, you are not allowed to post an entire dwelling unless the host will be present. It's also illegal for someone to own and list multiple units on the platform.
This is really going after people who have more than one place.
Former City Council member Ben Kalos wrote the new rules requiring hosts to register.
There's one host who has 400 apartments being listed.
How's Airbnb feel about it?
We sat down for a phone interview with Airbnb's regional lead of public policy, Nathan Rotman.
Our focus right now is ensuring that the regular folks who live in their home, short-term rents on an occasional basis, are allowed to continue to get registered or will be allowed to get registered and will be able to continue to operate after this law takes effect.
Rotman did not push back on the city's fight to remove hosts who are operating more like hotels, but that is precisely the area where Kalos says Airbnb could have taken action previously.
They could have, from the very beginning, made it so that only people who are doing the right thing and following the city and state laws were hosts.
Why, though, wouldn't Airbnb have taken action in the past to remove those types of people?
It's frankly like we don't know who's who. And so without a registration system, there's no way for us to actually be able to do that.
But if a host is posting, if they have like 20 different apartments and 20 listings, wouldn't that be pretty clear?
It's complicated for us to make the judgment call. The enforcement has to be the city's responsibility.
But exactly what that enforcement will look like and when.
So the enforcement has to be the city's responsibility. So they are cracking down with the city. So if you guys also are in New York City or trying to think about getting an Airbnb in New York City or any other state, you can literally go on Airbnb.com and type in the city or state for their regulations. Here is Airbnb's regulations for New York City, and they're definitely going to be updating some of these regulations as well. But for now, it shows you exactly what you need to be posted, how long someone is able to be staying in your home, and all that other good stuff as well. Also, if you want to take a deep dive into the marketplace in New York City or any other location, airdna.co is a great place for you to start looking at different short-term rentals in the area so you can accurately understand the data as far as how much you could charge throughout the nights and stays of every single stay. Here is another video about Airbnb in New York City in particular, where they're cracking down on these Airbnb hosts in New York City and allowing people to only do maybe one or two less as far as stays, the amount of time people are getting in their Airbnb homes, hosting it on Airbnb, cracking down, letting people know that it's still not even enough places for people who are actually currently living in New York City for them to live. So they're trying to crack down on other people as well who are hosting on these Airbnb platforms, especially in New York City. This is also happening in Atlanta as well. But check the different states on the Airbnb site so you can know the rules and regulations on the website. Let's take a look.
Carolina Medina and her family turned to Airbnb once her immigrant father from Colombia had to turn in his taxi medallion after the rise of Uber forced an early retirement.
He was a yellow cab driver for 30 years. And so that's literally the only thing that he knew how to do. So when he lost it, we were just kind of like oh my God, like, what do we do now?
They invested thousands of dollars into the two-family home, making it suitable for large families to visit New York City who can't afford multiple rooms at hotels. But with Local Law 18 now looming, Airbnb hosts will not be able to rent out their properties for shorter than 30 days. Carolina says no one has stayed longer than 2 weeks.
The city is making it nearly impossible for us to use our home appropriately. We literally use our home for survival. What we make is what we use to maintain our home and to maintain like a livelihood and for my dad to be retired like in peace.
One of the city's arguments is that Airbnb is decreasing the housing stock.
Instead of renting to regular New Yorkers who live here, go to work here, take their children to school here, they're renting to out-of-towners, leading the prices to go up on the rest of the housing.
Carolina's listing is now set to a 30-day minimum stay, but has sat empty, causing a $7,000 loss in profits so far. She says being an Airbnb host is more than a monetary transaction for her family.
They're going to our local bodegas and they're going to our supermarkets, and I get to know the people that are coming here, and it's just kind of like a cultural exchange more than anything.
The law was set to go into effect on Monday, but the registration program will now begin 30 days after the final rules are published, which will happen after a public hearing this week. And Carolina says if the city continues to propose and implement strict laws on Airbnb hosts, she and her family will strongly consider moving to another state. Reporting in Jackson Heights, Queens, Michelle Ross, Pix 11 News.
So this is exactly what it is. Guys, make sure you find different spots on Airbnb where you can find these locations for your city or state. I'm out. Peace.